Friday, January 15th, and I am back for my stitching update. It has been 2 weeks since my last one, so I hope you have all been well and you've been stitching and making and creating all of the things. If you are brand new to my channel, welcome. This is a video podcast about cross-stitching and sometimes quilting. However, if you are not interested in seeing the quilts, I show those a little later on in the video, and I let you know in plenty of time that they will be making their appearance, so that way, if you're not interested in seeing them, you can go on to the next Flosstube video. However, if you are a returning subscriber, welcome back. Hope you've had a great 2 weeks. So before I go any further into the video, I want to say a big thank you to everybody who left such kind comments in my last video. I was not expecting that, but it really was a treat. And so I thank you so much for all of the kind and wonderful comments. And I tell you what, I will take kind, good comments any day of the week. But thank you so much. It really did mean a lot to me, and it did a lot to lift my spirits. So thank you so much. The other thing is I realized that in my last two previous videos, I forgot to show Freddie. I did not mean to do that. I think the last time when I was recording the video, he was asleep at my feet, and I meant to grab him at the end of the video and show him because he is getting big, and I just completely forgot. I was going to, when I started the video, I was going to have him in my arms, and you know, he was going to be here, kind of like Priscilla and Chelsea do, where they have the two little dogs, but he was being a rascal and was not cooperating, and so I put him down. I tried a couple of times to get him so that I could show him even in these last few minutes, and he's being ornery. So he's napping across the room, and I'm gonna go into my video a little ways, and then I'll go grab him after he calms down a little bit. I subscribed to this kind of like a puppy update, and it'll tell me how many weeks old he is, and then things to like expect. And this morning it sent me a thing saying he was 34 weeks old, and that in puppy years, that means he's basically an adolescent teenager, and to be prepared for orneriness and him to basically not, like when you teach him commands and you teach him, to like do different things, and to expect that he's not going to be so willing to do the commands as he goes through the teenage years. Yay. So it explains a whole lot, trust me, but I'll let him calm down and then I'll show him in my video. But he is getting big. He's pretty much full grown now. He desperately needs a haircut and a bath. So those are, I'll give him a bath this weekend, and then he goes in for a haircut next weekend. But I'll make sure to show him, and I'm sorry that I forgot to do it. It wasn't intentional, but if you follow me on Instagram or my Facebook page, I do sometimes put pictures of him or things that he's doing, and I'll put those in my stories. So at least you can kind of see him there in between videos. In my last video, I showed my finished Anniversaries of the Heart. If you're new here, I was stitching my Anniversaries all 2020. That was the goal I had set for myself. I started it January 1st, 2020, and I finished it on December 28th of 2020. So I showed it in my last video, and I got a ton of questions about my anniversaries. So I thought what I would do, instead of saying what the question is and then answering it, I'm just going to go ahead and answer it, because a lot of the questions were the same. Some had multiple questions within the same comment. So I thought that might just be a little bit easier. I'm going to kind of keep this video going. It's going to be a little bit not necessarily faster, but we've had some funny stuff going with our Wi-Fi. We had this wind event that came through, and it caused a bunch of damage, knocked out power, and the internet has been kind of glitchy, and it happens later in the day. So I apologize if I speed through the questions or speed through the answers to the questions. It's just because I'm worried about the upload later on today. So, Anniversaries of the Heart. Anniversaries of the Heart is 12 blocks. If you have all 12 blocks, you have everything you need to stitch the entire Anniversaries of the Heart series. This is block number 1. One of the most asked questions was about the stitch count of stitching it all on one piece. So if you look on the first booklet of the Anniversaries, it'll give you the stitch count for the block itself, and then it'll give you the stitch count if you are stitching all of them all together on one piece of linen. So you take that, 387 wide by 261 high, and you plug it into a stitch calculator, and then you pick the linen or the aida that you're going to be stitching it on, the count, and it will tell you how big of a piece of fabric or linen or aida that you will need if you are going to be stitching it all on one piece. I ended up stitching mine on a piece of 35 count sand because I had it in my stash. Brian had ended up purchasing it for me from a place in the UK called Willow Fabrics, and he had bought me some 32 count and then this 35 count. I think it was actually sent to me in air, but it turned out that it worked out perfectly for my Anniversaries piece. The reason why I also stitched it on a higher count because the Anniversaries, the original was stitched on a piece of 30 count, which makes it a pretty good size finished piece. And I don't have a whole lot of wall space, so I need to make sure that everything I stitch, I sort of condense it so it will fit. And that way I can get more on my wall than just a few pieces. So the 35 count worked out perfectly. The piece of linen that I needed for it was, in inches, it was 19.5 by 27.5. I did mine with a 2-inch border. I probably could have got away with a 2.5-inch border, but at the time I wasn't sure if I was going to put anything along the bottom. I didn't know if I was going to customize it, in any way, so I just decided to put it up there. I started 2 inches in, 2 inches down, 2 inches in, and then that's where I made my first stitch. And I will show the entire Anniversaries. So here it is. I'm hoping that very soon I will find a frame for it and can get it framed. I stitched this with a combination of my family and my husband's family. So it has my husband's parents, his grandparents, my grandparents, but then it also has my great-grandmother and my great-great-grandmother, my great-great-grandmother. It has my 2 children. It has my sweet dog Molly, who passed away at the end of June last year. And then it also has little Freddie that I added to the final block. Is that, yes, so that is, I think that's everybody on there. Yes. The reason why I picked my great-great-grandmother and my grandmother was because my great-great-grandmother and my great-grandmother. And the reason why those 2 ladies were added to it is because they were both quilters, and I'm a quilter, and I wanted to honor that legacy. Also, another reason is because I inherited my great-great-grandmother's sewing machine. So the great-great-grandmother who I stitched as the January block, I have her vintage sewing machine. It was a sewing machine that she taught my grandma to stitch on. And then my grandma inherited it when my great-grandmother, boy, this is getting really confusing. Okay, so my grandmother, who taught me how to quilt, was taught by her grandmother. So that's my great-great-grandmother. Her name was Martha. So when Martha passed away, my grandmother inherited her sewing machine. So it's a vintage Singer sewing machine, and I have it. It's across the room. So when my grandma got it, she told herself that when she has a granddaughter, she will pass her oldest. So her firstborn granddaughter, she'll pass it along to her, and that was me. I am her oldest, and I'm her oldest granddaughter. I'm her oldest grandchild, and I'm the oldest. I'm the oldest. Wow, this is not going very well. In my head, it was perfect. So I am my grandmother's oldest grandchild, and I'm also a granddaughter. So I inherited it from her. She's still alive, but she moved, and so she couldn't take it with her when she moved. So she gave it to me. So my plan is that when I pass away, which the promise is that as the granddaughter, it is my job to pass it then down to my granddaughter when I pass away, my oldest granddaughter. If I'm lucky enough to have one, and then I might have to figure something out. If I don't, I might just have to go to my oldest grandson, I don't know. Anyway, the hope is I will have a granddaughter to pass it down, because that would just be a really cool tradition to be passed down through the women in my family. Anyway, so my plan is that my Anniversaries piece will accompany the sewing machine. And there's a quilt that I have from my other side of the family. Wait, that's gonna be confusing. How do I want to explain that? Okay. So this piece, my Anniversaries piece, will accompany the sewing machine, okay? And there's a second block on here, and it yells, let me find it, because I just did her initials. Okay, so right here, this block here, which was Swan Lake, it's number 7, I stitched it for Mary Slaby, and Mary Slaby is related to me on my paternal side of the family, and she is my great grandmother, and she was a quilter, and so was all of her sisters. And I have a quilt that she made that was quilted by all of her sisters. So my plan is, because as a gust and as, no, that's not even going to make any sense. Anyway, this is not making any sense. So my plan is that the quilt that she made, the sewing machine, and my Anniversaries piece will be passed down to my oldest granddaughter. If that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. In my mind, and when I was rehearsing it in my head, it made perfect sense. Perfect sense. So I hope I haven't confused you too much. Now, I am planning on doing a video where I show each block and I show who it was stitched for, if I have a picture, if I have a quilt, whatever piece that I have that represents them, I will put with the block. So you'll kind of get the whole history of my Anniversaries. I hope that makes sense. Honestly, it really did sound so awesome in my head. So my Anniversaries piece has been stitched with a variety of floss. I did Gentle Arts, Weeks, Classic Colorworks, DMC. The way that I approached it was, for instance, with this piece. This one is the one that is going to be your biggest headache, and it already has been for a lot of people, because I have gotten a ton of questions about what I used in stitching this piece. So if you get it in the mail and you're like, well, I'm gonna go and I'm going to buy all of the called for threads that are listed inside this book, you're gonna get them, and it's gonna have a very fall vibe to it. It's not gonna be this wintry scene. Now, I've seen it stitched with the called for, and it is very beautiful. But with the linen that I had picked out, it was not gonna work at all. So I instead looked at the picture and I pulled those colors from my stash. And that's what I did with all of the series, because a lot of the stuff was not going to match it was gonna blend in way too much with my linen, and I had to change everything. So what I did, I looked at the picture of each booklet and I went to my stash and I pulled colors that I thought matched what was charted. I hope that makes sense. But I promise you that this one right here, once you get past it, it's smooth sailing, because this one is the one that was the troublemaker. And the one that I agonized. I pulled a ridiculous amount of threads for it. probably all the way to the end. I was switching out threads. That particular block had more threads pulled for it than any block that I have ever stitched in my entire stitching career. It really frustrated me, but if you can get past it, I promise it's worth it. The other question I got was, what did I use to research my family tree? So I used a website called familysearch.org. It is a free website for you to use. You just go in, you create an account, and you put what you know, names and dates. You don't necessarily have to have dates, but names. You put what you know, and then it just goes from there. I also do use Ancestry.com, but you do have to pay for it. And I was actually just getting ready to, in my subscription to it. And then I got a hit on a bunch of branches of the family tree. And I'm just waiting for a response to somebody that I emailed because she might know about Brian's grandparents and great-grandparents. She's like a distant cousin to him on his Grandma Pearl side of the family. It's like it would be his great-grandma on his paternal side. Paternal, maternal? I don't know how that works. Anyway, so I'm waiting. And then, of course, I started to get a bunch of hints and all sorts of things. So yesterday I was busy doing that for a couple of hours. But those are the two websites that I used. One is free, one you have to subscribe to. Both are great, but if you don't want to, if you don't want to have like a subscription, Family Search is the way to go. So the other most, not necessarily asked, but definitely the most statement-wise that I got towards the end of my anniversary was that they want to do the series, but they're aida only stitchers and there's a lot of over one stitching to be done. And so they weren't sure what they should do. So I thought about it a little bit, and I don't know if you're gonna like my answer, but it's probably what I would do if I was stitching on a piece of aida. So bear with me, okay? Back stitching. No, I can hear the groans, I know, because if I really wanted to stitch something and I was like, what should I do? And then the person that, I'm watching says, well, you need to back stitch. I probably would groan very loudly. But here's the deal. So my grandma was an aida only stitcher when she was doing cross stitch. And in her stitching, she was like attracted to the pieces that had Bible verses in it. And I can remember seeing the different pieces around her house, and I knew that she put wording on those cross stitch pieces. So there was one night I couldn't sleep, and there's two pieces that I own that my grandma did. The first piece that I have, and I'm gonna need to take it out of its frame. It's something I've been meaning to do for a while, and that is this piece right here. So she stitched this on a piece of probably 14 count aida is what it looks like. But if you see here, there's all these words that she back stitched. So that could be a possible alternative. Now, the one thing that you would have to do is, because there's no, the Anniversaries has a, it's got a grid for the alphabet. There's definitely not one for back stitching. So what my grandma would have done is she would have got a piece of graph paper and she would have handwritten out what she wanted to write. And so think about it. So if you do decide to do the Anniversaries, you're stitching it on aida only, and you do the back stitching, but it's in your own handwriting, that would be very cool. And something that, 100 years from now, when your great-great-granddaughter, grandson is looking up at it and they're being told the story of it, they would actually see your own handwriting. So that is something that she did with aida. And so that's probably what I would recommend. I was thinking, well, you could move motifs around and you could do the full cross, initials, but then you would lose part of the, the block, and that wouldn't be any fun. But if you think about it, let's compare. So I'm going to back this up. Okay, so you can see the over one stitching that's right there. And now I'm going to hold up this piece and you tell me which one looks better. It doesn't. They both look fabulous. So why couldn't you just back stitch you would still be able to have the names, you would still be able to have the verse. It would now be in your own handwriting. I mean, that would be very cool. So something to think about. Also, if you're like, well, I'm not sure about my whole handwriting, you could just do a block, like just a regular, like, not with the cursive, but you could just, print it out like this. And this is one that I know for sure that my grandma did by her own hand, because when I was in middle school, I was going through a really, really tough time, and my grandma stitched this piece for me. So she would have pulled these out of one of her cross-stitching magazine. And then this Bible verse here was one that there was a book I was reading when I was a kid, and the heroine of the book, whenever she was afraid and, she was, was going through a rough patch or anything like that, she would say this verse. And so my grandma charted out this verse to remind me that, when I was having a hard time, that I needed to say this verse. So I know for a fact that she would have charted this one out and stitched it not from anything that she would have saw. She just did it freehand. And it looks great. So I would say that that's probably the way I would go. If I was stitching this on a piece of aida, I would backstitch the words. I would backstitch the names, because then I would still be able to have that small font in that area. So it's something to think about. And I hope you don't think I'm crazy for saying that. But, at first I was like, well, you could manipulate the block and you could move, you could, put the full cross in, or you could put the name in its full, alphabet form. But then you would have a lot of like great big names all over your piece, and that might not be something that you want to do. But this way, if you were to backstitch it, then you could have it be any size you wanted it to be, and it would still look just as great as if you'd stitched it 1/1. So it's something to think about. And also, I'm guessing that you could probably find an alphabet like on the internet, a free one or something like that, where the letters are already charted out for you. But otherwise, I know she would have taken a piece of graph paper and she would have written out what she wanted to say. So I'll zoom it in again, just so you can kind of see it. And it gives you something to think about, something to consider. So I hope that answers, I think that's all of the anniversary questions that I got. I just kind of wanted to put them all together, and because I didn't want the questions to take too long, and I'm probably going to go through and edit a lot of it, because I feel like I don't know. Sometimes in these videos, you think about the things that you want to say, and then you get ready to say it, and it's just like, this does not sound right. So anyway, I hope that answers your question about stitching on aida. And then, I hope you'll consider the back stitching, because I think it would look really great. I really, really do. And I kind of almost wish I would have thought about it when I was first starting my anniversaries, because that would have been the way to go on some of the, I think it would have looked really cool if I would have had them in my own handwriting. And to be honest, as I was stitching a lot of the names, I didn't use the alphabet that came with the chart. I manipulated some of the letters, because I didn't like the fact that the A and the E were almost as tall as the lowercase d. And so I had to manipulate a lot of those in the piece. And so I think that if I had thought about that when I was first starting, I just might have backstitched the names. So next time. Okay, so I did get a little bit of happy mail over the past couple of weeks, and you'll be so proud of me, because none of it is charts. I've been very, very good. I realize I'm 2 weeks into the new year, but my sort of pledge to myself was that I was going to stitch what I have, and to only buy if I needed linen or threads for something. And so 2 weeks into the new year, I'm doing pretty good. There are some that I see that I really, really, really want, but I just write them down, and someday I will get them. But as for right now, I've been very, very good. But I did get some thread bling for my floss. And I was on Etsy, and there is a shop that is one of the ones that I favorited, and I saw that she had listed some new thread bling, and that is Sophia Violet Designs on Etsy. I will put a link to her shop down below, but I ordered this little guy. So this is kind of a vintage. It's got a cow, a pig, a chicken, a sheep, and they're just sort of standing up on each other. It's got a little bit of this little, I'm not sure what this is called. It's basically, it's bling for your thread bling. But she could not let my thread bling travel alone, and so she sent me this because she knows that I love to stitch houses, and it's got these little extras attached to it. She also sent me this ship because she knows that I'm working on the Coming to America, the Women of the Mayflower. This vintage pumpkin, which is so beautiful. And she sent me this one for Valentine's Day, which I love the little bling that is on it. The little bling that goes all the way around it. Love it, love it. There's one other one that she sent, but I already have it attached to one of my projects, and so you'll see it here in just a second. But I will put a link to Gina's shop down below, and thank you. I love them. I love thread bling. It's so fun. It's like needle minders and thread bling and scissors. Those are like the three things I love to collect. And then yesterday I received a package from Lisa Abbey Needleworks, and this is the card that she made me. It's so beautiful. And she was watching, I don't remember if it was my last video or if it was the video before, where I said that I had run out of floss rings and I needed to get some. And so she sent me some, which I had to laugh when I pulled them out of the package because I still have not bought them. They're sitting in my Amazon shopping cart and they've been there for probably 2 weeks and I just have not bought them. But then she sent me some that she made that has the thread bling on it, and it was so sweet. And I love this one. I love like the old-timey, I just love them. They make me happy. I love them. So thank you so much, Lisa. And I will put a link to Lisa's channel down below because she has a Flosstube and it's fantastic. So thank you so much, you guys. I mean, I know I just said this, but I love thread keeps. I call them floss bling because that's what they are. It's bling for your floss, and I love them. And they're so fun. It's so fun, you know, when you've got like a big batch of thread and you need, you know, I mean, it looks so good. It just looks so neat. I love it. And whoever came up with that idea, genius, because I love them. I love them, love them. I love them like I love my needle minders. I love them. So, and I do swap them out sometimes depending on the season or my mood or just kind of whatever floats my boat. So thank you so much. All right, let's talk about what I have been working on over the past couple of weeks. First up is Parson Brown by Notforgotten Farms. This is my morning stitch. I started this back right before Christmas and then set it aside during the 2 weeks of Christmas. I usually stitch on it in the morning when Ethan is getting ready for school. And I thought I was only averaging about a half an hour a day, but it turns out it's more like 45 minutes to a half an hour. So when Ethan returned to school last week, I picked it back up. I stitched on it every day, Monday through Friday last week, and then this week I've worked on it Thursday and then today Friday. On Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I was putting on binding, which it turns out that putting the binding on in the morning got those 4 quilts done. So this is my progress so far. I did swap out all of the colors. I'm kind of going for a little bit of a prim look. Did not pull the DMC that I'm using. It's back in the project bag. It's mostly because I'm not sure if all of those colors I'm going to use or if I'm going to swap out anything new. So hopefully in my next video I will have this done. This morning I was working on his hat. Once I get that done, then I'll go down and fill in the last portion of the snowman. I'm stitching this on a piece of 36 count Summer Khaki. And I was watching Lori Holt's, I think it was her last Flosstube video, and she showed a finish where she had taken something that's relatively the same size as Parson Brown, and she put it on a book. And I think that was genius. It's just kind of an old book. It's kind of one of those ones where, you know, it just gets passed around to flea markets, to Goodwill, to, you know, all those places. And I thought maybe I'll go down to the Goodwill and see if I can find, you know, maybe an old dictionary or something like that. And then that's what I will attach him to, because I think he would look good right over here if I can get him done before winter's over. Anyway, so that has been my morning stitch, and it's a nice way to start the day. You know, I have a cup of coffee and then I sit down, and it's, you know, Ethan's getting ready for school, and the house kind of quiet. It's quiet for a little while, and it's a nice way to sort of wake up and kind of gather your thoughts for the day. Next up is Anne Priest by the Scarlett House. I started this one back on my birthday in November, and then decided with the new year that I needed to find a way to incorporate it into my stitch rotation. So in these past 2 weeks, I worked on it on the 11th and 12th of January. And so you won't see this one again until February, when I take it back out again and stitch on it sometime the beginning of February. And this is my progress. So this is a piece of 36 count Saraphim fabric, and I believe it's caramel. And I am stitching it with all of the called for everything. I bought a big giant piece when I was at Acorns and Threads, because I think Anne Priest will fit right here. And then this side will be for Maria Finney. So I will cut. I'm going to leave it all as one piece until I get all the way over here, and then I will cut it once I make sure that I have absolutely enough, and then I will cut it. So for a little while, it's going to be a little bit bulky. And also, one of the things that I noticed is that this piece of linen is very wrinkly. So if you have any suggestions for me to get out a persnickety batch of wrinkles, I already have the Ellen's spray starch, which is what I hate to put it on hand-dyed linens, because once you do that, the dye comes out on the, you know, it like comes out and it kind of changes the molted look. It'll either spread it out, or it'll just completely transfer it to the towel that I usually have underneath. So if you have any other remedies for getting out wrinkles on a hand-dyed piece, please let me know. The thread that I'm using is all of these gorgeous ones, and then this little piece of thread bling is the other one that Gina sent me. So it does have my name on it, and it's not going to show up because it's really bright, but it has my name on it. It sort of reminds me of like a Ray Dunn. And I love it. So I took it and I attached it to this one because I just had like a tiny little ring on here. And so it's perfect. So thank you. And oh, these are all the threads that I'm using. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful threads. And I think they're already called for. Next up is Olga's Autumn Stocking by Plum Street. This is my Wednesday stitch. I'm stitching this with Yvette. I've had a lot of people ask if Yvette has a floss tube, and she does not, but she should. And I can hear her laughing right now as I say that, but I really think she should, because she's a fantastic stitcher. She stitches beautiful pieces. She is on Instagram, and I will, down in the description box, I will put what her Instagram handle is. And I'll flash it across here too. I need to start remembering to do that, because if you're like me, you watch a lot of Flosstube on your television, and I need to get better about, you know, if I say I'm going to put something down below, that I just quickly flash it across the screen so that those who watch it on TV can write it down. Anyway, so Yvette and I have been working on our Olga stockings together. We work on them on Wednesdays, and I finally managed to get Olga finished. There was a couple of Wednesdays where I was only able to get about an hour of stitching. I think Yvette is ahead of me. She finished the pumpkin that's under Olga. So I have a lot of catching up to do. I'm stitching it on a piece of 36 count Vintage Pearled Barley with all of the called for threads. And I love it. And I love being able to work on something that's autumn because I love autumn. And it's such a fun piece. I'm glad that we decided to stitch on it together. It's a lot more fun when you can stitch on something with friends. These are the threads that I am using for Olga. Again, all of the called for, and I absolutely love them. They're all my favorite fall colors. Let's see, next up is my New Year New Start, which is Liberty's Welcome by Plum Street Samplers. This one is turning out to be quite the beast. I mean, when you look at it, you think, it's not that big. It's not going to take me that long. It is that big, and it is going to take me that long. This is the called for DMC, which I have already decided because I looked. This is the house color, the DMC 613, and it is not showing up on the piece of linen that I have chosen, so I will be changing the house color. I will probably do that over the weekend. I think I'm going to go with something that's like a whitish gray because that's kind of what it looks like in the picture. And here is my progress. So I finished page 1 finally last night. So as you can probably tell so this is the beginning of the roof, and right in here, which I can barely see it. I mean, I don't have my glasses on, but I can kind of tell there's something that's right there. But that 613 is supposed to be the stars, and I can't see the stars even with my glasses on. So my plan is to go back in and back stitch and then back stitch up in here because there's a star right there. And it's not showing up on this linen. This is a piece of 36 count Picture This Plus Heartland. So I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna change the house color, make it a little bit more gray than white. Not too gray because the roof is already kind of a dark gray. And then, yeah, hopefully it'll work out okay. But I don't have to worry about it for a little while because as the pages go, it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6, and then it drops down here. So I still have a little bit of time to find the perfect gray that I think will work. So tonight, my hope is to work on it for a little while. It'll just kind of depend on how long it takes to edit the video and then how long it takes to upload. But I'm hoping that maybe I'll get a couple of hours on it tonight. And then, of course, it will be put away for 2 days because it is autumn at Hawkran Hollow time. So this is my weekend whip. My weekend whip, if you are new, it is a project that has been in the mocking basket of whips. It's been there for a while, and it basically just needs me to find some time to get back to stitching it. So on Saturday and Sunday, I will stitch on a long-term whip. So I've had 2 weekends so far on it, and I already had the top of it done, the first block finished, and the second block was where I picked it back up, stitching it. And I feel like I haven't got very far on it. So the very first weekend that I started working on it, I only averaged about an hour each day. Last weekend, Saturday, was kind of the same thing where I only stitched on it for about an hour. And then Sunday, I actually got 2 hours on it. So that's where I ended on Sunday night. I got the scarecrow done. I still had the field around the pumpkins to finish filling in, and then I will be starting on the barn. So I still have a long ways to go. I have to be honest, when I was looking at the piece, I thought, I'm gonna be able to get that done in no time. Those blocks aren't gonna take that long. They're like mini Hades. They take a long time. So I'm stitching this on a piece of 40 count vintage country mocha with the DMC conversion. And I love it. I'm so glad that I'm stitching on this one again. I have missed it. And I know lots and lots and lots of other stitchers are also working on it because it keeps popping up every now and again, and hoping that's going to help keep me motivated, because it's going to stay, the plan is it's going to stay in my weekend rotation until it's totally finished. So that should be in 2023. Hopefully not. Hopefully I can finish it a little sooner than that, but I'm enjoying the process. So here is Freddie. I just got him up. He was sleeping and I just woke him up so I could show him. But he is getting humongous. But I love him. He's absolutely adorable. Anyway, I'm sorry that I haven't shown him in the last couple of videos, but he is always with me. He's always in this room, or wherever I am, that's where he is. And so he was sleeping right over here. So I thought I would grab him really quick. Well, Freddie wanted to be put down. He is now laying at my feet, sleeping again. It's amazing how quick he falls asleep. Anyway, so as far as all the cross stitching goes, that is all I have to show in this video. I am going to show some quilting next. So if you are interested, please stick around. But if you're not, this is a great stopping off point. And of course, I'll be back in 2 weeks, and I hope you have a great 2 weeks. But now for the quilting. So the past couple of weeks, I have been very busy doing a lot of quilting for myself. I've also been doing some quilting for clients, but I didn't realize how much I missed making quilts for myself until I sat down and I started working on different projects. As far as quilting goes, I think I was very productive these past 2 weeks, and I have a lot of big plans for the year, and I think it's going to be a fun quilting and stitching year for me. The first thing that I made, and I finished this, I think over the weekend, this is called Broken Dishes. This was a tutorial by Diary of a Quilter. I made it out of a charm pack called Walnut Creek by Vintage Fabrics. And it was a charm pack that I picked up from my local quilt shop. And I love it. I just need to get it quilted. And then it'll actually be here when it's done, where I'm sitting. We have a coffee table that lifts up, and so that's what I'm using for my table, and it'll go right here. So I'm going to show you the 2 Block of the Months that I have been working on, and then I have 3 quilts that I finished for myself that I want to show you guys. So one of the questions that I got either last time or the time before was, what do I use to store my quilt blocks in? Or my quilts in that I'm working on, what do I use to store it in? And this is what I use. This is, I think technically it's called a photo box or a scrapbooking box, but I get mine at Michael's. I picked up a couple this last time. They were on sale for $4.99, and they're perfect to, not only, they keep your projects safe when you're not working on them. So this particular box holds the my first set of blocks from the Best Friends Quilt Along or Stitch Along that is being hosted by the Fat Quarter Shop and Lori Holt of Be My Bonnet. I did, let's see, the first clue was the log cabin blocks. You had to make 12 of them, and so here are my 12 blocks. I did mine all scrappy. And so here's the first one, and I will put a picture of them at the end. I have left all the papers on them, and will leave all the papers on them until I go to assemble the quilt. It just helps to keep them nice and neat, and then I'll tear the papers off then. And there's that one. So I used all scraps from my stash. A lot of these scraps came from this quilt, which this is Long Time Gone by Jan Kingwell. So, and then also the mystery quilt that I'm going to show here in a few minutes. A lot of these came from that as well. They were a lot of fun to make. I have not started on the clue that just released yesterday. It is the economy block. I plan to work on it this weekend, and hopefully, at least if I don't get them assembled, at least I can get all of the fabrics cut out. when I first attempted this block right here, the very first one took me a while, but then as I went along, it got a little bit faster because the way that they do their foundation paper piecing is a little bit different than the way I was taught. But it was once I had done the first one, it was really easy to just sort of to just go from there. So 100% of my plans this weekend is to make the next 3 blocks in the Temecula album quilt. This the quilt blocks were gifted to me by Cindy, and I've been enjoying looking through. I mean, I get all the blocks out and I look at all the fabrics, and it's just such a beautiful quilt. A number of you guys have sent me messages saying that you have already made this or you're in the process of making it, and it's just such a beautiful quilt. Temecula does an amazing job with their fabrics, and I had the best time putting the first 3 blocks together. My plan had been to iron these, but here is the first block that you put together. This one took me way longer than it should have. I don't really know why. I think it's because I hadn't made, even though, you know, I've been a quilter for eons now, sometimes when you take a little bit of a break, when you go back to begin assembling a quilt, sometimes it takes you a little while before your brain's like doesn't want to compute it. And so this block, it took me like 2 days to put together. It was the funniest thing. I kept putting the block together wrong. It was also this flying geese block you needed to make. And then this one. This is the flower basket one. So this block here, you could choose whether you wanted to hand applique it or machine applique it or however you wanted to do it. I decided to machine applique it. So I cut out the flower and I used heat and bond, and I attached it, and then I sewed it down with my sewing machine. Because I knew that if I decided to do the hand applique, I would never get it finished. And it's not because I'm lazy or anything like that. It's just, I'm already doing cross stitching, and I just thought, you know what, if I want to get that block done, I need to machine applique it. There's nothing wrong with machine appliquing. I do it a lot of the time. It just kind of depends on my mood. And my mood that night when I was working on it was to machine applique it. And it looks beautiful. And I'm just so glad that I have the first 3 blocks done. The next 3 blocks are this one right here. And I love that schoolhouse. This one right here is going to take me a little bit of time, but I'm excited to get to these ones. So that is my plan for the weekend, is to get those cut out and get a couple of them made. Also to work on the best friends quilt. We'll see. The last couple of times that I have decided to make plans during the weekend where, I want to work on something, it doesn't usually happen. So I'm hoping that this weekend it will. All right, so I have 3 quilts. You guys have already seen these quilts, but I now have them quilted, and 2 of them are bound. The first one is, and I don't necessarily know if you'd call this a postage stamp quilt, but it's just a sort of like a scrappy, I don't even know that you would call it a scrappy one, because it's got the same cream fabric throughout. But I got this one finally quilted and I got it bound, so it's 100% done. And I love it so much. I just did the swirl motifs. I like swirls. It's probably my favorite motif to quilt. And so I do put it in a lot of my own personal quilts. It also does have some paisleys in there. So I kind of mix the swirl motif and the paisley motif together. And I love how it turned out. I am just so happy to finally have this done. If you've been following me for, well, at least what was it, March? Since March of last year, that's when I started putting these blocks together. Let me show you the backing really quick. So this is a Civil War fabric that I picked up from Thousands of Bolts. I believe it's by Marcus Brothers. And for a little while, I remembered what the name of it was, and then I have since forgotten it. But I was working on this in the spring, and then I was going to do it as a table topper. Decided when I got it all put together that I wanted it to be a throw, and so then in the fall, late fall, I went ahead and I cut out some more fabrics. I ended up ordering some Civil War scrappy charm squares from an Etsy shop, which I think she was closed for a while, but I think she's open now, and I will put a link down below because it enabled it to still continue to be scrappy, and they were 5.5-inch blocks, and I was able to cut out a lot from the because it's not a charm square like a specific line. It's a scraps left over from various lines, and she'll cut them into 2.5-inch, 5.5-inch. I think she also cuts them into jelly rolls as well, but it enables you to get like a scrappy variety of prints. So I went ahead, I finished it. It's fully finished now, and I have been enjoying it for the past week. Next up, this quilt here was, the quilt blocks were sent to me from Carol Crago on Instagram, and she sent me all of the blocks and the fabric, and I was able to assemble it into the quilt. It has been waiting for its quilting for many months. The backing fabric is Pumpkin Farm. I also think it's by Marcus Brothers, but that could be wrong. But it is, the fabric name is Pumpkin Farm. But I finally got it quilted. I worked on it, I think Monday, and then I was able to work on the binding on Tuesday morning, and I got it all done. I just did a simple meandering. I love this one. I'm so glad that I finally have it finished because it's been waiting for me for months and months and months. And here is the bottom. It's just such a beautiful quilt. I love all of these blocks so much. I think this was also, was it a Temecula one? I should have looked. I have all the paperwork for it, and I should have looked before I did my video. But it's fantastic. I love it. And Carol did all the hard work. All I had to do was put it together. But I love it. So I call this my Carol quilt. And I love it. It's hanging across the room on my quilt ladder. And I love it so much. Love it, love it. And then last, this one does not have binding on it yet. I quilted it Tuesday. This was the mystery quilt that I did with my quilt group. Unfortunately, there is no pattern for it, but you could probably easily manipulate any 6.5-inch block and you would get a similar result. So I did this one 100% scrappy out of my scrap bin. A lot of the scraps came from this quilt. And you would think that I would have no scraps, but my scraps seem to grow. Every time I turn around, the bin is bigger. This particular square right here was from a Lori Holt book. It was one of the Farm Girl. I think it was the original Farm Girl book. I think. I'm pretty positive that's where I got this block. And so that is my middle star motif, because the star that they had picked for it, I didn't really think it complemented the big star in the middle. So I have that one all quilted. It's a swirl motif. And I'm hoping this weekend to get the binding. Let me show you the back. This is the backing, and I got the backing at Joann's. And I have some left over, and that's what's going to be the binding. So that is what I managed to work on this past week, the past 2 weeks. So I feel like quilting wise, I got a lot of progress done, and it makes me very, very happy. My plans for this next week include working on the Temecula album quilt, working on the best friends stitch along or quilt along, getting the next blocks done, and then getting, so every Thursday for the next, so it goes 5 weeks, and every Thursday they release a new, like what you need to do for that week. So we'll call them clues. 2 clues have come out, and then next Thursday another clue will come out. So hopefully by the time I do my next video in 2 weeks, I will have both of those clues done, because I would have just gotten the next one, and there's no way I would get it done or even work on it before my video, which would then be the next day. I also have a block of the month that is coming in the mail. That is the Forevermore block of the month. It was supposed to be here earlier in the month, but with the postal service, you know, being really, really slow in December and the beginning of January, it delayed that fabric from coming in. But it's on its way now, so it should be here early next week. So I'm really, really excited for that one. That block of the month is, well, I'm doing it through the Fat Quarter Shop, but it is available in other places. All you do is type in Forevermore block of the month and it should pop up. But I'm excited for that one to come. When it is finished a year from now, it will be hanging here. It's big enough for this space, and that's where it's gonna go. I think it's gonna be kind of a wintry piece. So I can't wait for that to get here. I am very excited. There's just, I really do feel like I have a lot of great projects for this coming year, and I'm really, really excited. I'm really, really excited. And I love Civil War reproduction fabric, and everything that I'm working on is going to be like a Civil War theme. So I love it. Love it, love it. It's my favorite. Anyway, so that is all I have to show for this video. I thank you so, so much if you have stuck with me all the way to the end. I do appreciate it so much. I don't know how long this video is going to be. I hope it uploads really, really fast, so that way I could do some cross stitching this evening. But if it doesn't, that's okay. I, of course, will be back in 2 weeks, so I hope you have a great 2 weeks. If you want to see what I'm up to in the meantime, my name on Instagram is Pumpkin Hollow Quilts, or I do have a Facebook page, which is Pumpkin Hollow Quilting. Feel free to follow me in either one of those places or both. And I guess that is all I have to say. I always feel like I'm forgetting something, and I really do hope that I explained my anniversaries a lot better. I'll know when I edit the video. It's either going to be a hot mess or it's going to be a-okay. So hopefully it's a-okay. Anyway, guys, I'm going to go ahead and go. I hope you have a great couple of weeks, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye.